You're watching MMA Oddsbreaker. I'm Frank Trigg. That is Jessica Evil Eye, getting ready for a debut in UFC against Sarah Kaufman down there in Houston. First of all, how was the trip?
It was awesome. I actually had a really good friend that works for United, and he upgraded me and Marcus's flight to first class. So I felt like a complete stud, like traveling in first class, and it was awesome.
You're sitting there with your legs crossed, reading your book, and everyone's walking by because you're first on, and you're waving at them. Hi, front seat, front seat, hi.
Yeah, and we were in the very front too. So like, I got to kick my legs up and everything. And like, of course, like the flight attendant was like asking all kinds of questions. She's like, "So are you some kind of athlete?" And I was like, "Oh yeah, I am." And then obviously it started a whole other conversation. So.
And how receptive are they of finding a female professional mixed martial artist that's in the big show?
I know it was really cool because it was a female pilot too that was flying the plane. So like they're like, "Can we make an announcement?" And we're like, "Yeah, if you want to." And like they were just like walking around taking pictures with me, and they were like, "Girl power, go girl." So it was really cool, and it was really nice. Like they all said that they would tune in on Saturday to watch. So it's exciting.
That's good. That's really good. Now, does that add a little bit of extra pressure? Because we all know they're dumping all the time and advertising into Ronda and Misha. I mean, that's just what they're doing. But you're still at that empowering stage for women. Like, there's still women that aren't sure about jumping in or not, and they're going to be looking at you. Does that give you a little bit more pressure? Is it something you look forward to? Like, what is it like?
Well, it's really not a pressure because I feel like the hardest part, like the pressure was in the first beginning years, like whether or not like I was even going to be able to make it through an amateur career. So the pressure is kind of off. You know what I mean? Like if you can't make it through the early years, like when you really don't know how to fight, like why should I be worried now? Like I know how to fight more than I ever have. So it's like, it's not as scary. But you know, it's exciting because like I know I'm the underdog. Like I'm the little Bellator fighter that fought 125 that can't handle coming up in weight. But I mean, little do they know like what my life is about, and like it's not fair to assume that because like I never assumed that about them. Like I don't assume they can go to 25 when some of these girls don't. They don't cut weight. They don't even try to. Whereas like I don't know, I kind of have that hard style wrestling like where I went down for as long as I could and I learned. So here I am at 35, and I feel better than I ever have.
Well, we'll get to the weight here in a second. I do have a question about that, but I'm looking at your amateur record. You were 5-0, two decisions, a submission, 2 KOs. Was it your second fight, your fifth fight? When did you finally realize, like, hey, I can make a living at this if I jump pro? And did you jump to pro just because the opportunity arose, or were you actively seeking to make that jump to pro right away?
Well, I not only did my MMA, like I had 5 amateur MMA matches, but I also had 5 boxing. So like most people don't really know that. So it's kind of hidden out there. And, I think that's why people don't really know much about my striking abilities. Cause like I learned a lot of striking from some top level Olympians, female. So it was like, they were on that cusp of like, were they going to go to the Olympics and stuff like that when, before they had the women. But, a lot of local boxers really, really helped me out from like the Golden Gloves and from nationals and stuff like that. But it was shortly after it was against Lauren Cooney. She was like a national champ, and she actually fought at 131, and I boxed against her and smashed her like terribly. And of course they were like looking at me like, "Oh, this MMA girl, she can't box." So it was like that after having those fights, and then my amateur, we finally went pro with Amanda Lavoie. Like we had already planned for it, like we knew it took 5 fights in Ohio before you could go to pro, and we wanted that. And at that point, I'd done a ton of grappling tournaments, my MMA fights as well as my boxing. So it was like I was ready. We felt like it was time to go pro. And when I went pro, there wasn't anything. I mean, there was barely Strikeforce. You know what I mean? They just started talking about it. So it was like, hey, take the chance. Maybe, something will happen with women's MMA. And just so happened, I went pro. I had my one fight against Lavoie. And then my second fight was actually against Ring of Combat. And it was with, it was Marissa Caldwell. And then I went to Ring of Combat. Yep. And when I went to Ring of Combat, actually, Scott Coker called our camp and wanted me to fight Jan Finney at 140. And I was like, well, wait a minute. We weren't sure about women at 140. You know what I mean? Like it was still so new about weight classes. So we were like, no, we're going to stay, the 125, 130 because we had asked for a catch weight. Anyways, long story short, like I ended up fighting my ring of combat at 131 anyways, and then a couple other fights after that at 130. And, my debut Bellator fight against Casey Nolan was at 131. I weighted that day probably the smallest I ever had that day, and I was at 123. And they were like, whoa, like, you need to put some weight on. I mean, granted, I've not seen 123 since then, and I think that was the only time I seen 123 in my life. But I was sunk in. I lost a lot of, water weight.
Well, that brings me to the question about the 25-pound weight class. I'm watching the Ultimate Fighter, and most of the women on there are 25-pounders. But on the show, usually even the guys, they come in and they're gonna, if it's a welterweight, I'm not going. If it's 85, I'm going, because you have to make weight so often. A lot of guys don't go at the weight class they're supposed to be at. Kenny Florian, I think, was an 85-pounder, and ended up fighting at 55 by the time it's said and done.
Yeah.
Do you think the UFC is setting it up so that there will be a women's 125 after the show is over? Because half those girls really should be at 125. You're a 125-pounder. Do you think they're going to try to open up the 125-pound weight class? And if they do, are you going to jump back down to 25, or are you going to stay up at 35?
I mean, at this point, Trigg, I've changed my training a little bit more. Mm-hmm. So it's at this point, I don't think I'll ever be able to make 25. I think over the past 2-3 years, me being at 25, it was really close. I mean, I would be able to diet down to about 35, and then the rest was 2 gallons of water, sucking it out. And I mean, who wants to fight that way? That's not what fighting's about. Fighting's about ability, not how much weight you can cut. So, I get the whole concept of win the fight before it gets in there with the water cut and stuff and, the weight cut. But I'm just so tired of dealing with it like that. That's like taking a race car to the track on a quarter tank of gas and expecting it to run, some of the full tank. It's not going to. Shit's going to run out,
Yeah.
So I'm excited. And to be honest, I don't think the UFC is ever going to be interested in a 125 because of that reason. I think, if anything, they're going to force 25ers to go to 15. So you're going to see that 15-pound weight class in the the 15 in the 135, which I feel with women, women don't like to cut weight. And yet again, they don't want to diet. They just want to be able to do it. So it's hard to diet. It's hard to weigh out your portions and do that kind of stuff. But it's kind of like that happy medium where some girls can fight in between. And that's kind of like that 125's been.
Let's talk about Sarah Kaufman. She's your opponent down there in Houston. Break her down for because a lot of people at home haven't seen women fight other than Rousey. They just haven't been paying attention. So break down Sarah Kaufman for us.
Sarah Kaufman, obviously, she's known as a vet, considering because she's fought in Strikeforce. I don't consider that a vet, technically. There's no vets truly in women's MMA because we haven't been around for a decade yet. So until we've been around for a decade, there's no true vet. These are all beginning fights. So I feel people consider her a vet because they've seen her, on Strikeforce, or, have heard of her before they've heard of other girls. So obviously, we'll go with the whole quote unquote vet, thing. She's fought in Strikeforce. She's a well-known striker. I mean, everybody kind of believes her to be the best striker in women's MMA right now. Very stern, but also very nice and, very well, kind of well-rounded. So, I mean, I guess if I had to give it a sum up, well-rounded, a good striker with, just a fundamental basis of the ground.
How tough is it training just to train in general? Are you still in a situation where most of your training partners are guys?
Oh, yeah. I mean, they all are. I mean, they're always going to be that way. And to be honest, I don't know if like I told you before, I don't know if I would ever have it any different. I bring the females in when I need to, and when I need a change up. And like I said before, I actually work with a lot of female boxers, and boxers are different. And they're different in a lot of ways. They just want to come in. They're not looking to make friends. They don't really care about friendship. We're coming to get our rounds in, and then I'm leaving. So I do work with a lot of female strikers up in Cleveland. But as of female MMA, I've worked with Kelly Warren. Actually recently, me and Zoila have both kind of buried the hatchet, and we talked about. I know she's gonna be fighting Vanessa Porto, or is it Vanessa Porto she's fighting?
I think. I'm not sure. Honestly, I'm not sure.
She's fighting somebody, anyways, here soon, and in one of the Invictas. And, we've been kind of, messaging back and forth about maybe doing some work together. So it's we kind of buried that hatchet in that aspect. And it's she tweeted me the other day. She's I'm proud of you, girl. Go you. You know what I mean? You deserve it. And hey, maybe some of that, she even said, maybe some of that stuff was for show, or, for the hype or whatever. And she's like, look, I respect you, go you.
Well, for you
So
folks at
it's
home,
been kind of nice.
for the folks at home that don't know, Jessica fought Zola in Bellator and caught her in an arm triangle within the like the first minute of the first round, like just absolutely destroyed her.
58 seconds.
So 58 seconds, excuse me.
Yeah.
So it was burying the hatchet was obviously easy for you because you have the victory. And so coming from her side is a little bit more difficult when you have to make friends with someone who's beat you. But it's very difficult.
Yeah, right on. And then again, like this sport is like that. It's so competitive, and I've got to spend some other time with some other professional athletes, and football players, basketball players, and like I'm starting to realize like it's just about the professionalism. Like I'm cool. Like I've seen Sarah. Like today was like the first day that we were really like face to face with some of these interviews and stuff like that, and like. I'm not sitting there trying to shoot her dirty looks. Like, yeah, of course I'm going to look her over. I mean, yeah. I'm going to check her out. I want to know what she looks like, try to get that mental image. Just I'm sure she's doing the same for me, but I don't hate her. Like, I don't hate her. I don't care about her. You know what I mean? Like, all I need her to do is show up for the fight. And I'm kind of like that with women's MMA. And I know it might sound a little harsh, but I have friends. I have really awesome friends. I have about 50 of them that are traveling down to Houston and already 10 of them that are here now. So it's like, it's, just the professional aspect. Like, wow. It is what it is. We're supposed to fight. That's all. I mean, we'll be cool afterwards. Doesn't mean I'm going to call you and be like, hey, you want to go on vacation together? But
right. That's great, Jessica. I appreciate you coming on and spending a couple minutes with MMA Oddsbreaker. It's a real pleasure to get to interview you again, and I can't wait for this fight on Saturday night. For me, this is actually one of the more exciting fights. And remember, I'm a guy that doesn't like women's fighting. I don't like women's MMA. And this new generation of women, including yourself, have completely changed my mind about it. I didn't like it at all. And over the last 18 months, I've kind of like stalking it now. Like I'm following it all the time and reading all the articles I can. So you're one of the girls that made me change my mind.
Well, I'm glad to do that. And I'm going to keep making everybody believers. So, I mean, all I got to do is keep winning one fight at a time. And I'm going to take over the sport and make sure that other women have it a little bit easier than maybe I had it.
Thanks, Jessica. Appreciate it. Good luck on Sarah. We'll talk to you soon.
Thanks.